Then we move it over to me when I do mine. So Genslow doesn't really need this at all.
No, so we're not going to give people.
Oh, we are.
Yeah, that's
When
the
anyone
first.
speaks, they must have the microphone.
Yeah, sorry. Where's the disposable or where's the beautiful? Because I don't mind doing both.
Well, this is it. So we just detach it from here. So it takes a second. And then you pull this out there, and then you pull all that out. Okay. Okay. There you go. Shove that right under your mouth.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right, you go. You go. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're a pop singer, because they just do that, don't
distance, yeah. So, specialist subjects, taking and giving. We're doing prayers first, though, aren't we?
O Blessed One, Shakyamuni Buddha, precious treasury of compassion, bestower of supreme inner peace, you who love all beings without exception, are the source of happiness and goodness, and you guide us to the liberating path. Your body is a wish-fulfilling jewel. Your speech is supreme purifying nectar, and your mind is refuge for all living beings. With folded hands I turn to you, supreme unchanging friend. I request from the depths of my heart, please give me the light of your wisdom to dispel the darkness of my mind, and to heal my mental continuum. Please nourish me with your goodness, that I in turn may nourish all beings with an unceasing banquet of delight. Through your compassionate intention, your blessings and virtuous deeds, and my strong wish to rely upon you, may all suffering quickly cease, and all happiness and joy be fulfilled, and may holy Dhamma flourish forevermore. I and all sentient beings, until we achieve enlightenment, go for refuge to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. I and all sentient beings, until we achieve enlightenment, go for refuge to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. I and all sentient beings, until we achieve enlightenment, go for refuge to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. virtues I collect by giving and other perfections. May I become a Buddha for the benefit of all. Through the virtues I collect by giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha for the benefit of all. Through the virtues I collect by giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha for the benefit of all. May everyone be happy. May everyone be free from misery. May no one ever be separated from their happiness. May everyone have equanimity, free from hatred and attachment. In the space before me is the living Buddha Shakyamuni, surrounded by all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, like the full moon surrounded by stars. With my body, speech, and mind, humbly I prostrate, and make offerings both set out and imagined. I confess my wrong deeds from all time, and rejoice in the virtues of all. Please stay until samsara ceases, and turn the wheel of Dharma for us. I dedicate all virtues to great enlightenment. The ground sprinkled with perfume and spread with flowers, the great mountain for land, sun and moon, seen as a Buddha land and offered thus. May all beings enjoy such pure lands. I offer without any sense of loss the objects that give rise to my attachment, hatred, and confusion. My friends, enemies, and strangers are bodies and enjoyments. Please accept these and bless me to be released directly from the three poisons. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryatayami. The path begins with strong reliance on my kind teacher, source of all good. Oh, bless me with this understanding to follow him with great devotion. This human life with all its freedoms extremely rare, with so much meaning. Oh, bless me with this understanding all day and night to seize its essence. My body like a water bubble decays and dies so very quickly. After death come results of karma just like the shadow of a body. With this firm knowledge and remembrance, bless me to be extremely cautious, always avoiding harmful actions and gathering abundant virtue. Samsara's pleasures are deceptive, give no contentment, only torment. So please bless me to strive sincerely to gain the bliss of perfect freedom. Oh, bless me so that from this pure thought come mindfulness and greatest caution, to keep as my essential practice the doctrine's root, the pratimoksha. Just like myself, all my kind mothers are drowning in samsara's ocean. Oh, so that I may soon release them, bless me to train in bodhicitta. But I cannot become a Buddha by this alone, without three ethics. So bless me with the strength to practice the Bodhisattva's ordination, by pacifying my distractions and analyzing perfect meanings. Bless me to quickly gain the union of special insight and quiescence. When I become a pure container through common paths, bless me to enter the essence practice of good fortune, the supreme vehicle Vajrayana. The two attainments both depend on my sacred vows and my commitments. Bless me to understand this clearly and keep them at the cost of my life. By constant practice in 4 sessions, the way explained by holy teachers. Oh, bless me to gain both the stages which are the essence of the Tantras. May those who guide me on the good path and my companions all have long lives. Bless me to pacify completely all obstacles, outer and inner. May I always find perfect teachers and take delight in holy Dharma. Accomplish all grounds and pass swiftly and gain the state of Vajradhara. From the hearts of all the holy beings, streams of light and nectar flow down, granting blessings and purifying.
So I'm doing the first section on taking and giving. It's really, really lovely chapter. So in short, may I directly and indirectly offer help and happiness to all my mothers and secretly take upon myself all their harm and suffering. So Bodhisattva Langritampa tells us that this is explaining the practice of taking by means of compassion and giving by means of love, and it's a conclusion to the preceding verses. So in short means in conclusion. And then I love this, he says, his presentation is very beautiful, and it is very beautiful. So he just goes through the previous 6 verses in synopsis that explains how to cherish others, enhance cherishing love, extend our compassion, accept suffering. And then it says, quite like this as well. It says, as our love and compassion grow and our self-cherishing diminishes, it becomes increasingly easy to accept suffering and to engage in the practices of taking and giving. I'm looking forward to being able to deal with suffering. So the 7th verse, he now explains the practice of taking and giving. So this I found quite helpful actually. So when we first meditate on taking and giving, we can't actually take on the suffering of others, nor can we give them the happiness. But by imagining we do, we can train our mind to be able to do that in the future. And taking in this context means taking on others' suffering upon ourselves through meditation. So directly is about taking through the power of concentration, and indirectly is through our imagination, which is kind of what we do now, really, don't we? And I like this as well. It says we don't have to think too much about how it's possible. We just we just kind of need to do it, and just keep it. Just remember that it increases our merit and concentration, and it purifies our non-virtues and delusions, especially self-cherishing. He then gives some examples of accomplished yogis being able to take on the suffering of others. And then in the next chapter, I think it's a really interesting question. It says, if Buddhas and high bodhisattvas have the power to take on suffering and but bestow happiness, why are we all still suffering? And he says that actually Buddhas do give us blessings all the time, and he kind of likens it to a doctor taking medicine, that we can only achieve liberation if we take the medicine of Dharma. So a doctor can't cure a disease, just the person actually takes the medicine, which I think is a good analogy. Oh, and I like this as well. It's this sort of thing that says when the sun's shining, if the house is shuttered, then no light can get in. So we need to develop strong faith so that we can get the full sun of Buddha's blessings. And faith is the life force of spiritual practice. I think that's true really, isn't it? That you can practice without faith, but it's a philosophy, isn't it, rather than real Dharma. So anyway, now it talks about taking by means of compassion. So for non-humans, suffering only causes them distress and unhappiness, and they can't learn anything. But for us, suffering, I love this, because it's like, oh, I wish I could feel like this. Suffering just feels like suffering at the moment, but suffering can be a great incentive to develop renunciation, compassion, and bodhicitta, and can encourage us. And there's the example of Master Gampopa, the young monk. No, can't have been a monk if he was married. The young person who became a monk. Yes, that didn't work. No, but the chap who was married and was heartbroken and turned to Dharma and became a realised master. So I think the example here is that for qualified Dharma practitioner, suffering has many good qualities, and samsara's sufferings are like a spiritual guide. Because there's a mention of that earlier, isn't there, about trying to think about your sufferings as teaching you and as your spiritual guide. Can you imagine how much better life would be if you could do that? Certainly make my life a lot better. So the next bit is taking on our future suffering, which I found a really good meditation to do. I did it a few times when we were studying this bit. So to prepare for our actual meditation on taking on the suffering, we can begin by taking on our own future suffering, which is a really good way of purifying our negative karma, because if we remove the cause of our future suffering, there'll be no basis to experience the effect. And we need to do this while we have the opportunity. And it also reduces our self-cherishing. And also, if we can happily endure our own adversities, it won't be difficult to take on the suffering of others. So the actual meditation is that we imagine all the sufferings we experience in the future in all 6 realms, gather together in the aspect of black smoke and dissolve into our ignorance of self-grasping and self-cherishing. And we believe our ignorance of self-grasping and self-cherishing is destroyed, and then we've purified our negative potentials. How cool is that, really? And then we meditate on it. And there's also that we can also prepare for meditation on taking suffering through prayers. And there's a little thing from Offerings to Spiritual Guide. And I made a little note, so I don't know if it was a Tilopa note, but the end of that chapter, I put practice and pray in my 2 little notes to myself. So the benefits of taking on others' suffering. So the words in its root text is all my mothers. All my mothers refers to all living beings. And this, I think, really catches quite a few people out, and it certainly caught me out early doors because it's quite difficult, and I think that's why you also kind of need faith, that we've had beginningless time, we've had beginningless mothers, and just because we cannot recall our previous lives doesn't mean that they're not our mothers. So we do not recognise them or remember their kindness, but it doesn't alter the fact that they're in essence our kind mothers. So I think rather than get focused on the literal bit of it, I think it's important, and he says, if we regard all living beings in this way, it will be easy to develop pure love and compassion. And I think it's just focusing on how it, I think it might have been you, Lisa, who mentioned this to me a while ago, was if you just think about it, it's just easier. It's really difficult to be mean to someone if you're thinking of them as your mother, isn't it? And there's no point dwelling on others' faults. It's far greater to focus on their kindness. And I've got a little note at the section of this top of this, which was also a Talopa note that said, "Hello, Mum." I think we all said hello, and to just remember to say, every time we view someone, we just think, "Hello, Mum." I did it to the cat, and it felt a bit weird. But it was also good as well. So, yeah, there's just enormous benefits of doing this. And I think then obviously it also says that to help understand that is ultimately nothing is true except emptiness. So, and then I think the next bit as well was really helpful in terms of we can choose to view ourselves, other people in our world in whatever way is most beneficial. So, the next bit is to talk about the 4 main benefits of this meditation, which are also quite hardcore. So, to purify the potentials of our non-virtuous actions that cause us to experience disease, accumulate merit, ripen our potential to benefit others, and to purify our mind. So, this is a nice sentence as well. When we purify our mind through the practices of taking, giving, every spiritual realization will grow easily. And we should practice these meditations sincerely, it says, and then Talopi must have said regularly, because that's another little note I've written, to do these meditations sincerely and regularly. And then our compassion becomes stronger. Oh, yeah, and then obviously, ultimately, we can transforms into the universal compassion of a Buddha. And I like this bit as well from a practical point of view, is we will also develop a very strong mind that can bear adversity. Because at the moment, at the slightest hint of hardship, we recoil in dismay, which is pretty true for me. But we need to strengthen our mind. We can strengthen our mind so it becomes unshakable. And we need a strong mind to be able to deal with the hardships that life throws at us. And this helps. This helps with that. So this is a good bit as well. So those with deep experience of the practice of taking and giving can easily fulfill their own and others' wishes, which is also pretty cool. And why is that? Because they've got so much merit, and because their wishes are motivated by compassion. So yeah, I suppose if your wish was to have a big shiny car, that's probably not quite the same as wishing someone to be really happy, is it? Or free of sickness. So there's the example of there's just loads of examples really, and basically it says that sort of lots of bodhisattvas in the past have just done some great things by having that kind of that compassion and that concentration. And then there's a nice story as well about Geshe, isn't it? When he was a young monk and his teacher came to see him, and he had a blessed mala and he got well. But I think it was the statue of Avalokiteshvara just getting increasing in size, having to get a bigger cabinet. I'm not sure. Yeah, it just made me smile. Right, so the next bit. Am I still doing some more, Sudano? I'm finished, aren't I? I think I just carried on making notes because I wanted to ask you some questions. Right, any questions? I've got a question for myself, but I don't want to ask it first.
I've got a question, Lucy. Did the cat answer back?
So is your question the cat answering back? Well, what if I said yes? And actually, to be fair though, she kind of does talk to me because she comes up and has a cuddle. So yeah, probably sort of actually. Right, another question.
Okay, so I've got a question. I love this taking and giving practice. I think it's an amazing practice. But one thing I find difficult is when I'm in real pain, physical pain, I'm just focusing on myself because it hurts. So how do I sort of push that hurt away and get into the place of thinking of others? I can do it a little bit. It just depends how bad the bad. You know, when you broke a bone and your leg's hanging off, and I'm like, I'm not thinking about others and taking and giving now. I'm just thinking, ow, that hurts. So just wanted any advice.
So your question is when you're suffering in pain and you can't think about taking and giving in terms of you're just thinking about your own pain. Is that the question? How do you negate that, and how do you be able to take? Well, I suppose at the moment it's recognising that's a bit challenging, isn't it, really? I think for me, part of it is, of which I fail on a miserable basis, regular basis as well, Cogden. But the next meditation, or the meditation in the next section, I think practicing the next meditations on taking and giving will help. I think part of it is just recognising our limitations in terms of how we feel now, but then also recognising we are limitless. So to try and focus on emptiness, and the emptiness of our body. I think emptiness helps. I think Sandrag used to talk about how that helped his pain, didn't it, in terms of focusing on emptiness. And I think Glash's sometimes says things are simple, and it's only simple if we practice and we can be familiar with them, isn't it? So the number one thing, I think, is practicing and becoming familiar. And I think this is the first time I've done these meditations regularly, because that's what I've been focusing on while we've been studying this chapter, and I've just found them really, really helpful. So I think the more you do it, the easier it will be. But it's that kind of not being discouraged and not being hard on yourself. But I really want you not to be satisfied by that answer, because I'd like to see if anyone else has got anything, and I definitely want to hand over to Talopa before we finish. So has anyone else got anything else to add to that? No.
Does nobody else experience pain?
Likewise, Cogden, when I am really suffering, I can't take on other people's suffering. But I guess at those times, I just have to remain patient and hope that one day that will pass, and just keep trying and kind of pecking away at trying to get better at our practice, but accepting that right now that's just how it is. It kind of well, no, it's semi-related to what you're saying. So, for me in the past, when I've been suffering mental pain, if I go away and meditate on it, I know I can definitely diminish it for myself.
but thinking about other people who are suffering, if I'm suffering as well, I don't know whether that would be like a bit of part one, but I've definitely meditated on physical pain, and you can actually get rid of most of it if you just keep with it. It's quite powerful actually, but it's really hard to think about other people's mental and physical pain. But I try my best to meditate for other people as well. So, do you want to add anything, Michelle?
I think I find when I'm really up against it that my dharma, my practice seems further away, you know, which is very frustrating because when I most need it, it's not there. You know, my mind isn't strong enough yet to make use of it when I most need it.
It's a good point, actually, because I think that's quite a lot.
Sometimes, Michelle, I can relate to that because sometimes when I'm really in pain, and mentally or physically, and I look at my shrine and I go, Geshe-la, I don't even want to look at you. Don't tell me that. Don't give me that Buddhist thing. But we just have to, I think sometimes for me it is really hard because, you know, I suffer mentally sometimes and I have a lot of physical stuff going on. And I've tried with this, taking and giving, I can sort of look at my future suffering and think, yeah, this is samsara, I'm going to suffer. But I really find it hard to reach out to others. When I had a real serious bad accident with my foot, I could do the kindness of others, and that was the sort of tool I applied to that, because I'm surrounded by kindness, people are helping me, you know, and everyone's really looking after me. But I didn't do any taking and giving, you know, in the hospital or anything like that, you know, and I think it's sometimes a tool that seems a little bit out of reach for me at the minute. Whereas I can engage in a lot of practice, you know, like the kindness of others, and, you know, remembering, you know, even emptiness, you know, people say, oh, emptiness, meditate on emptiness. Where's your body? And I'm like, it's there and it's hurting me. I grasp even more, you know, when I'm in pain. So I think, like Lisa says, just keep battering away, like a little woodpecker pecking at these, and just think, you know, sometimes we have to be a bit, I think, like, sort of not pretend, but, you know, implement it anyway, and think I'll try, you know, just try it, and think I'm just going to give it a go, like you said, just give it a go, and that works a bit sometimes, but like I say, that is one of my worst, when I'm in pain. I can cherish others when I'm happy, and give love and all that, but when it's about me, you know, when you've got a real raging toothache or something, and you're just like, I want to go to the dentist, and I want to get rid of this pain. So yeah, just where I'm at, that's all, and just thanks for the advice. Thank you.
Oh yes, sorry.
So yeah, I think it's something we have to practice when we're not experiencing pain or difficulties, and just practice on a regular basis. So when it's like if you think of a tennis analogy, you practice all the strokes when you're not in a match, and so you can apply them when you're in a match. And so you have, you know, you've got to be able to, on a daily basis, more or less, again. So, can you hear me now? So I was saying that in order to be able to apply these practices when we're actually in pain or suffering, we've got to be able to practice when we are not experiencing problems and difficulties. And the advice that's contained in this text and in Universal Compassion is that we should practice taking on our own future suffering first. So maybe once we begin to experience pain or difficulty, we can remember that this is nothing in comparison to the suffering we will have to endure in all our future lives. This is nothing. The suffering of this life is just nothing. And so we can imagine that we're taking on all that future torment and difficulty from all our future lives. So an infinite number of lives, an infinite number of suffering. And so if we don't get this done while we have this opportunity, even though we're experiencing real pain and upset and mental torment right now, if we don't get this done, then we'll just have to endure it next life and the life after that and so on. So we want to try and get it done this lifetime.
So Leslie sent a comment, and she says it might be possible to experience the pain, but kind of like an observer, like when we watch our mind in meditation, and then to separate it from, in inverted commas, me suffering, then the experience of pain might arouse a wish to take it from others as well as from self, and give healing and freedom from pain. Thank you, Leslie. Yeah, everyone is grateful for that comment, Leslie. Thank you. From my own side, I think this is a marvelous topic, and we all have something to share. From my own side, I feel that when things are getting really tough, the chips are down and you're really feeling bad, there's only one place to go. And you've got to look Geshe-la in the face, apart from the pub. Yeah, apart from the pub, yeah. There's only one place to go, and the toilet, of course. Is look Geshe-la in the face and just say, help me. And it's that point where you've just taken away your own, I can sort this myself, Eventually it will go. But we know in our heart, there's only one person that can truly help us. And we've really got, and they say, don't they, Ganda Dekyon keeps reminding us, we've got to beg for help. And I'm beginning to lose a bit of my pride and arrogance and try this once or twice. And it works, because you get help almost immediately. Yeah.
Thank you. That was useful. Question? So I'm going to ask my own question, but I would like someone to think about another question. So I'm going to give this question is to myself, and I don't know the answer. So there's a lot of talk about imagination, and that with imagination we can do anything, and once in imagination we can then, if we practice enough, we can transform that into the path. So my question to myself is, what do you do when you haven't got a very good imagination? So yes, if someone says to me, imagine your front door, I can imagine my front door, but I just don't have a very good imagination. So the only answer I've got that I do, which is to practice and try. But I'd really appreciate some advice on what people think that I can do to improve my imagination, which will help improve my practice.
Sometimes for me, I don't feel like it's about actually seeing something in my mind. It's more about a feeling. It's provoking. So it's not in my head, it's more in my heart. Yeah, so I don't know. But it's not necessarily something you can see, it's just something you feel sometimes. Yeah, like I can't, like if I'm self-generating, I'm not very good at seeing things clearly. But I try and feel, I try and think about how that would feel.
When Lisa said that, it just hit me there, because it's like, I'm very artistic and I love drawing, but I can't sometimes in my head picture stuff. You know, like, say someone says, imagine Vajrayini with a red button, and I'm like, look, I can just about imagine her hair, and that's, everything else is fuzzy. But the feeling kind of thing, I think that started when I first got into Dharma. You know, when you just hear the prayers and you just get overwhelmed by the words. And I remember someone gave me some really good advice, senior teacher. They said, let the guru do the work. We're always trying to push with our own feelings and our own, I need this, I want that, I want to get this from this puja. When we should just sit back and relax like we do when we're sunbathing, and just let the sun shine on us, just let the blessings come. And just, I feel when I do that, and my mind's not all chocker with stuff, I have the best pujas, the best meditations. I'm just like in the zone, as they say, in that sweet spot. Doesn't happen all the time, but you know, when we just feel it and we know that the Buddha's blessings are there, just let them do it for us. That's what I think anyway.
I'll add a little bit to that. So I'm quite creative, but I can really get good imagery in my mind, like it's a photograph. But it took me a long, long time to develop that. And it used to come in as like blobs or images of like outlines of things. But I think if you try and like meditate more on those images, they'll come to you eventually. And also what helps as well is like images in the book. If you keep looking at them, even if you meditate and you open your eyes and look at them again, you can see it coming eventually. But that takes a long time to develop. That's took me years, but it's possible.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And actually, you're one of the people I think about who has got a good imagination, because I remember you talking about emptiness and driving the car and being able to dissolve everything. And I remember thinking, I wish I could do that. Before I pass over to Tilopa, has anyone else got anything they want to say about that? Which has been really, really helpful.
Leslie makes a comment which I think is rather helpful. She says, but I think we have amazing imagination. She says, just look around us. We just don't recognize we're imagining all the time.
Talupa hasn't got anything to add to that, which is... it was really good. Leslie, thank you. That was really good. But it was all really, really helpful. Thank you. So, has anyone got a question? Helen, have you got a question? It's not my section, no. But thank you.
My other question would be when we're trying to change our understanding of taking giving from the imagination into the reality, apart from just believing in that, and it says that it will happen. I thought it would be useful to know a bit more about that, just so I understand it. We have to have faith and it's possible, but there's sort of some technical terms about changing a correct belief into a valid cognizer. I know it's Tantra, but I just to understand how it happens, because I don't understand that bit. Sorry, Lucy.
No, it's a really good question, and I don't know the answer. So if anyone else has got anything...
So the practice of taking and giving is sometimes referred to as bringing the result into the path. So the result, you are practicing the process of becoming an enlightened being. And when we attain the result, that's what we'll be doing. We'll be taking away the sufferings of living beings and giving them happiness instead. So it's just until we attain enlightenment, it's just like our practice sessions. But the process of engaging in the practice is leading us towards enlightenment. And it's leading us to enable this transformation of our own mind, because what's happening is we're developing the minds of compassion and love. And it's like the story of Asanga. When his mind of compassion spills over this threshold where he has the compassion for the dog, then he becomes this superior bodhisattva. And then he has that ability. But also, if you think about it, then Geshe Kelsang is doing the same thing for us, simply by showing us how to accomplish it, how to practice taking and giving. So indirectly, he's taking away our suffering and giving us happiness instead, if we do the practice.
If you want to understand some of the words of Dharma, like valid cognizers and that, there's a little glossary at the back of the book which you can refer to, and that might help you understand some of the text too. Because I know a lot of people ask this. It's like learning a new language sometimes when you study Buddhism, and you hear words like bodhicitta, and all this, and big long names like Avalokiteshvara and all that. So just use the glossary as well, or ask people as well. It's okay to ask. You've just done it now, yeah.
So, developing yogic direct perceiver means we have have a direct realization of emptiness. And that's, we're building towards that state. And as soon as we develop that, we become a superior bodhisattva, like a sangha.
So, are you happy with the answer, Helen? The answers you've had? Yeah. It also comes up in the next section, what you've asked, so we'll cover it again. So I have a question for you, Lucy, please. It says in the text, those with deep experience of the practice of taking can easily fulfill their own and others' wishes. Then Geshe-la poses the question, why is this? And the answer comes that I can't quite get my head around it. I need further explanation. It is because they have so much merit and because their wishes are always pure and motivated by compassion. So what's the actual mechanics of granting others' wishes through our merit and our compassion?
What's the mechanics? How do we grant people's wishes through merit and compassion? Oh gosh, some of these questions are tricky and challenging, aren't they? Well, I suppose part of it is that how you view yourself, isn't it? And not viewing yourself as a limited human being, but viewing yourself as on the bodhisattva path, isn't it? So actually, if you're practicing taking and giving, and you're trying to do it with a pure heart, because I'm not saying I don't get distracted and think about tea and stuff, but in theory, if you're trying to practice taking and giving, you're generating merit, you're generating compassion. I don't know. I don't know really. I'm going to open this up in a second. But I suppose from a practical point of view, sometimes when you say about fulfilling people's wishes, it makes it sound like a big grand thing, isn't it? But actually, do you not think sometimes just by when you do meditation on taking and giving, it makes you clean up the crumbs instead of wanting to smack your partner around the head? Which is one of mine. I don't want to smack him around the head. I just want to give him a little kick. But seriously, sometimes I think are we thinking too big? And actually, we should think big, because we've all got our Buddha seed and we can all become enlightened and we can all become Buddhas, and we're trainee bodhisattvas. But actually, just showing anyone kindness and compassion. I'm going to stop talking now because I'd like someone else to take over and give a better answer than me.
So when we're taking and giving, we're creating vast amounts of merit, aren't we? We're filling our body with merit. Merit is spiritual money. The more we invest in ourselves, the bigger and better, stronger our mind becomes. So we're able then to have the capacity to take on other people's, wishes, fulfill their wishes, and develop our mind. And it's like, we don't know the power of our mind, but if you come on Saturday, you'll find it out. So, we don't know the power. We use a little limited kind of thing in our mind, but we've got, like I've said again, we need faith and think with the Buddha's blessings, I can do this. When someone said to me, you're going to teach on Friday, I was like, there's no way I'm getting on that throne and talking about Dharma. I can't do it. But now I teach 3 times a week. And that's through blessings. And because we're going to fulfill people's wishes, because if we're doing taking and giving, taking away their suffering, we're making a karmic connection with that person or them people. So through karma, that's going to ripen. Eventually, as a Buddha, we'll be able to see them and have a connection with them already. So we'll be able to fulfill their wishes. So that's all I've got to say. So.
Actually, you just made me think. I'm hoping someone else might have something else to say as well. Is part of it talking about how you can, through merit and compassion, flipping that slightly, is it not just that we want to fulfill people's wishes, so we just do more to make that happen? Just was thinking about that, certainly thinking about me and crumbs and things. I am much better at kind of not getting my knickers in a twist about the little things. Has anyone else got anything to add to this?
No, I think the crumbs, the little crumbs, is the best. Yeah, because you just have to do what appears in front of your nose. I mean, there's no point in thinking, oh, I'm going to take away all the suffering of everybody in Australia. And it doesn't mean anything. But when you're faced with someone directly in front of you, then that's where it really counts. Yeah. So, and in the process, we're training in abandoning our own self-cherishing and coming to cherish others. And that means we're more interested in other people. And we focus our attention on them, so we get to know who they are. And we get to know what their problems are. And with wisdom, maybe we can help them with their problems. And also we're just wishing for them to find their real happiness as well. And again, with wisdom, we'll be able to say, do whatever is needed, because our focus is on them. We're so good at knowing what we want, and when we place because we place the focus on ourselves. But if we place the focus on other people, we'll get better at knowing what they want and how to make them happy. Like clean up the crumbs, yeah.
Talking about cleaning up the crumbs, when I started working for the NHS and looking after big teams of like cleaners and maintenance people and stuff 2.5 years ago, they absolutely hated me. I went in like a bull in a china shop because I had all these business ideas, but I think I applied Dharma to it, and we've got a really good relationship with each other now, you know, a two-way street, and I always like ask them to give their input as well. I think it's really important because I did see the suffering, you know, and I was on their side as well. Being the middleman, I can see both sides, but yeah, I kind of like put a lot of my Buddhist teachings into it, and showed them a lot more like love and compassion and understanding, and I've got the results now, and it's all singing, all dancing, and that's to Gashly.
It's a really good point. My working life is so much better by putting Dharma into practice, without doubt. And actually, when you're kind to other people, they're kind back, aren't they? Most of the time. Yeah, well, not all the time, but most of the time. Right, are we... Whose question was that? Who's your question? Are you satisfied? And have you got anything to add, actually, before we finish, in terms of your thoughts?
So there's some, I think the answer, or part of the answer, comes in the next section. So we'll get round to that in a sec. Leslie's just making a point, staying on the same question. She says, think in terms of the mechanics. It's about getting closer to purity and ultimately bringing about, experiencing a pure world. Maybe, she says. Okay, thank you, Leslie. Anybody? Any further questions for Lucy? Okay. Okay, thank you. Lucy. Yes, please, if you would. Thanks. Okay, so my section begins on page 169. So the actual meditation on taking. So there are two ways of training in taking by means of compassion. Okay, I'm not going to read the whole book, but just bear with me. The first is to focus on all living beings in general and imagine taking on their suffering. And the second is to focus on particular living beings and imagine taking on their sufferings. So I put that down to, the first is a bit sort of global, macro, and it can be a bit abstract because it's all living beings in all realms, while the second is more local and more micro. It's the people we know and appear to us either on the news or in our close comic circle. So to practice the first method, we visualize ourselves surrounded by assembly of all other living beings without exception, etc. And we develop compassion for all these living beings by thinking about their suffering. Okay, so we know now how to do this, so I won't give the description, but yeah, well, that's what we do. We develop compassion for all these. That's our first job to do. And then we're focusing on all of these in the 6 realms and contemplate their suffering. And we think from the depths of our heart, in their countless future lives, these living beings will continually experience, without choice, the sufferings of humans, animals, hungry spirits, hell beings, demigods and gods. How wonderful it would be if all these living beings were permanently freed from the suffering and fears in this life and countless future lives. May they achieve this. I myself will work for them to achieve this. I must do this. It's rather good, that one. So, with compassion for all living beings, we should continually practice this meditation until we experience signs that indicate our mind has been purified. Now, the benefits of recognizing this are now coming. These signs can include the curing of any sickness we may have had, the reducing of our delusions, our having a more peaceful and happy mind, the increasing of our faith, correct intention and correct view, and especially the strengthening of our experience of universal compassion. So it's not a bad meditation to do that, really, is it? It's okay. Now, it's about this belief then that the next bit about, well, we haven't actually taken the suffering of these living beings, we've just imagined it. But Geshe says our belief is still correct because it arises from our compassion and wisdom. Okay, more of this later. How is it possible? Okay, how is it possible for something that exists only in our imagination to become a reality? Yeah, so this is the explanation. And Geshe points out it's a remarkable quality of the mind that we first create objects with our imagination. Yeah, because they don't come into being unless we think of them, do they? So we first create objects with our imagination and then bring them into our everyday reality. And Geshe points out that, in fact, everything starts in the imagination. So nothing can happen unless we first imagined it. That's what Geshe is saying. I think that's what he's saying. Okay. He goes on in the next paragraph. If we imagine something that could, in theory, exist, and then familiarize our mind with it for long enough, eventually it will appear directly to our mind. First to our mental awareness,
and then even to our sense awarenesses. For as long as the object is still just an imagined object, the mind that apprehends it is simply a belief. If the object is a beneficial one, it is a correct belief, and if the object stimulates delusions, it is an incorrect belief. A belief, I think this is so important, so I'm continuing, I hope you don't mind. A belief is a conceptual mind that apprehends its object by means of a generic or mental image of that object. How could it do it otherwise? If we meditate on a correct belief for long enough, the generic image will become progressively more transparent until eventually it disappears entirely and we perceive the object directly. Beautiful. Okay, in the second way of training and taking by means of compassion, we take on the sufferings of particular individuals or groups of living beings throughout infinite worlds. For example, we focus on the assembly of living beings who experience the suffering of sickness, for instance, and develop compassion for them. So we might, Geshe goes on to explain that we might identify a certain problem or suffering that people are having that we'd like to alleviate. So, okay, and we can work on that. But he also says a bit further on that, especially if we're suffering, and this is another way to get around our own problems, and so we have a particular problem, we can then imagine, and we know we've done this, haven't we? We then imagine, it's very, very helpful, that not only am I suffering, but there's a lot of other people in this world suffer from exactly the same thing, and in fact a lot worse. So that's what Geshe is suggesting we do. This will help us deal with our own problem. And by purifying the negative karma that prolongs the problem, we may even rid us of it. So that's probably an answer to the earlier question in the first section, that if we have a problem, but we meditate more on the fact that others have got this problem, it purifies our own problem, and it negates the negative karma that's in that would be, it purifies the negative karma that would have prolonged the problem. So I hope that makes sense. We can talk about it in a sec. Taking motivated by compassion is extremely pure mind, unstained by self-cherishing. When our mind is pure, this in turn makes all our actions pure, so that we become a pure being. Saying, wasn't it, Cox? Okay, moving on. Giving by means of love. Giving in this context means with the pure mind of wishing love. Giving our own happiness to others through meditation. In general, Geshe says, in the cycle of impure life, samsara, there is no real happiness. So what are we giving if there's no real happiness? If we don't have any real happiness, how can we give it? So Shantideva puts us right here. To accomplish the welfare of all living beings, I will transform my body into an enlightened, wish-fulfilling jewel. And then once again, it's using our imagination to imagine that we are, in fact, this wish-granting jewel. Again, Tilopa emphasized this in the teaching the other night, that it's our what do you call it? The very essence of our body and mind, the very pure nature of our body and mind becomes the wish fulfilling jewel. We imagine through that we can grant the wishes of others and alleviate their suffering. So thinking this way, we imagine that from our continuously residing body at our heart, we emanate infinite rays of light, which are in nature of future happiness of enlightenment. That's how it works. It's our future happiness of enlightenment. We imagine that we are already enlightened. And this is what a Buddha's doing, isn't it? So we're imagining we're a Buddha. So moving swiftly on. So although we are principally training in the thought of giving, we can also engage in taking and giving in practical ways. So Gessler's saying that, you know, we don't have to necessarily sit on our cushion all day long and not engage in helping people in a practical way. Whenever we can, then we should help others. We can help when we meet people who are depressed and need cheering up. We can give our time and love. That's one example. He also says we can also give to animals, and he's basically pointing out how animals are so incapable themselves of solving their own problems, and they're so full of ignorance that we need to have real compassion for them. This is something I need to learn, because I'm not a great animal lover, but I need to learn. And this is lovely to hear. Well, people aren't so bad. It's animals. Anyway, we won't go there. I love dogs. Yeah. But I need to understand, appreciate that they are suffering greatly, far more than we are, and they haven't got the capability of getting out of their suffering. Okay. At the end of our meditation on giving, we dedicate our merits that all living beings find true happiness. And that we are imagining that these wonderful results, the sick restored to health, the poor obtain wealth, the unemployed find good jobs, the unsuccessful meet with success, the anxious, every one of us, find peace of mind, and so forth. Okay. And then quickly, I'll have to hurry up now. Mounting, taking, and giving upon the breath. So this was once a secret practice, and it's very profound and very deep and very effective. And Geshe explains how we do this. You can imagine this for yourselves, and you know what it's all about. As we breathe in, we take in the suffering of others, which, as we take it down into our heart, it destroys our self-cherishing and self-grasping. We imagine that's what's happening. It's destroying our self-cherishing and self-grasping. And as we breathe out, we give all living beings whatever they need. Even, just not, most importantly, peace of mind, but, whatever they need just right now. We can imagine that the gods get a peaceful mind, because they haven't got a very peaceful mind. They get relieved of their anxiety. And especially those in the hells, those in the hot hells get cooling breezes, and those in the cold hells get, warming breezes, and so forth. Okay, now this is the most important point. Once we are proficient at this meditation on mounting, taking, and giving upon the breath, it is very powerful, because there is a close relationship between the breath and the mind. The breath is related to the inner energy winds that flow through the channels of our body, and which act as the vehicles or mounts for different types of awareness. By harnessing our breath for virtuous purposes, we purify our inner winds. And when pure winds are flowing through our channels, pure minds arise naturally. And then, just to finish, there's a couple of examples for how taking and giving, practicing taking and giving, aimed at alleviating the suffering of others, cures our own sickness. And the example of the monk who gave everything away, went to the cemetery, he was dying, he knew he had weeks to live, and he just practiced taking and giving, and he purified the negative karma that was prolonging his suffering. And similarly, the leper who was helped by Geshe-la's mother on his way to Mount Kailash, and he spent 6 months circumambulating the mountain and practicing taking and giving. And then one night, falling asleep by a stream, he had a dream that worms crawled out of his body and into the stream. And when he woke up, he was completely cured. Finally, we can reflect that since beginningless time, we've had countless lives and countless bodies, but that we have wasted them all in meaningless activities. Now we have the opportunity to derive the greatest meaning from our present body by using it to engage in the path of compassion and wisdom. How wonderful it would be if our world, if many modern day practitioners emulated the training the mind practitioners of ancient times and became actual bodhisattvas. Okay, any questions?
Right. I can't remember my question. What was my question? I wrote it earlier in the week. Oh yeah, this is on page 174. So if we die with strong compassion for all living beings, we'll be born in a pure land. I suppose I was thinking about this because we had the power on Monday for Yogi and Marion. If we don't have compassion when we die, but people do power for us, does the power of the power allow us to be reborn in a pure land?
So the question was, I think, let's just get this right, let's see if I'm right in hearing it correctly. The text says that if we die with a mind of pure compassion, we go straight to a pure land. Okay, good. But Lucy says if we die and we don't have a mind of great compassion, but people do a power for us, will we go to a pure land? Don't know. Never died in where I've known. Well, I've died many times, but I've never noticed or remember. I don't remember it, do I? That's the problem. We've just got to believe and have faith. There's many people who die without compassion, and the very fortunate ones who have a power done for them. They are extremely fortunate, and I believe they do go to a pure land. But from our own side, we should continue to train. I mean, that this is a beautiful thought that if we do become familiar with great compassion, then we've got a wonderful opportunity to go to a pure land and finish our training. Gentlemen, if you got anything. Oh, sorry, sure.
So, hopefully I'm right. From my understanding, when we do the power, we do go to a pure land. But can I ask, if nobody's around to do a power for you and you're a practicing Buddhist, will the Buddhas do one?
And good question. Two good questions.
Or you could do power for yourself while you're dying. Yeah. So also, whether you go to a pure land or not, depends on who's doing the power for you. Well, that would be the people who are doing it for you. If you have good karma, then you'll have people with faith doing it for you. If you don't have good karma, you don't know who you're getting. Sorry? I'm sorry. Yeah, Yeah, that's why we do it. Yeah.
So the points just raised or made then were basically confirming that what Gentilopa was saying, that we need to get familiar with power so that we can do it for ourselves as we are dying. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Yeah. Question answered. Thank you.
So, just to clarify, does that mean that if the power is done by people with faith, then no matter what the circumstances of the deceased, it would transport them to the Pure Land?
Okay, so Michelle's asking that, she's asking to sort of reaffirm what Gentilopa was saying, that if the power is done by people with faith, no matter what the dying person or the deceased has done, or mind that they've had as they've died, will that power with people with faith still transport them to a pure land? Okay, good question. I would say absolutely it would. If we had a power, the previous, the penultimate power, the one we had before the last, was for a gentleman who'd committed suicide. And we've been requested by his partner if we would do this power, because she was so concerned that from what she'd heard from the Christian background, that he would go straight into hell. So which is really what you're saying, isn't it? You know, it's a pretty dire act to do. It's full of self-cherishing and self-grasping, and it's certainly not a mind of compassion. So, but yeah, we have to believe it absolutely that if it's done with people with faith, yeah, it can be done. That's my belief.
Yeah, because one of the initial parts of the power before you get to the transference of consciousness is purification. So you purify the mental continuum of the deceased person, so all their negative karma is gone.
And I can honestly say I've done lots of powers through my being in the centre, and a lot of people say they felt that person go. They felt it in their minds, or they visualised it. And even non-Buddhists, like my sister was a non-Buddhist, and her friend committed suicide, and he had one of Geshe-la's books. So she said, can you do that thing, that power thing? And she said, I didn't feel it at the funeral, but I felt it in the power. He's gone. He's gone to a better place, purified. So we can talk to people, and I've listened to people through being here for many years, and people say it works. As well as having faith in Geshe-la, it works, because direct experience, we felt it here.
So that's exactly the circumstances that my son went under. He took his life, but without a shadow of a doubt, I believe he's a Buddha. And people come to me and they say, I was seeing Sean in my dream, and Sean came to me last night, and this, that and the other, and I just kind of like laugh in my mind, and I think, well, that's funny because I can see him as a Buddha up there. So it's faith. It is definitely faith. Yeah. Yeah. Put a bit of weight on up there, like, but
Yep.
share. That was lovely. Thank you for sharing that. So this is from Linda. Hi guys. My sister is suffering with dementia and she fell down the steps head first. Does this mean she has no self-cherishing? She did not try and stop herself from being hurt less. Black eyes and bruises was the result. Thank God it was not a lot worse. So hang on a sec. So the question is, because she's got dementia, does she not have any self-cherishing?
Okay, so as Lucy just repeated there, and I'll repeat it one more time. So what Linda's suggesting or asking is, if someone has dementia and they fall down the stairs, do they not have any self-cherishing? She didn't try and stop herself from getting hurt. They're not control over their own mind. My feeling, I don't know, what do I know? My feeling is that everyone has self-cherishing until the moment before we become a Buddha. So, I don't know if that helps. I can't say any more. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Sadhana's quite right there. We all have self-cherishing until we realise emptiness, unfortunately. And even though what was it? It was a sister. Even though your sister fell down the stairs without stopping herself, she still had strong delusion in her mind. It wasn't like she was doing it with a bodhicitta motivation or anything like that. It was just because her mind's pervaded by dementia. You know, and we all suffer in this way. We're all going to experience this, you know, at some time or other in our lives. We're going to have to, if we haven't realised emptiness, we're going to have to go through our suffering with what dharma we've got. So, you know, we gotta do something, guys. We gotta really do something with our minds. And I remember Pende telling us a story. There was a lady he used to see in an old people's home. She was a Catholic, and because of her imprints of reciting the Hail Mary from when she was very little, with dementia, she used to sit in the corner and just recite Hail Marys all the time. So she was creating merit, even though she didn't know it, but through familiarity, she created that cause. And I think if we get, like we've been saying all through the class, familiarity is the key. We don't know what we're going to do when we get older. We're going to be in hospital, machines bleeping everywhere. But if we've got a strong mind in here, familiarity, that'll guide us, that'll pull us and connect us with the Buddhas. So, you know, we've got to just have faith.
Thank you. There's another question from other Linda, but just to finish, other Linda also, Linda whose sister, and sorry, I'm really sorry to hear that, Linda, it must be really hard for you. But Linda said she didn't put her hands out at all to stop herself, so that must be quite hard. I don't know if anyone else has got anything else to add to that. So, anything you want to say? No. Thanks for that, Linda, and really sorry to hear that. So another question, Susanna?
Could you text your sister's name so we can put it on the dedications here for the prayers? And I'll put it on Kadampa prayer request as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Gordon. Right, so another question from other Linda. So if we meditate on correct belief, the generic image disappears entirely. The imagined object will become a real object. How does this fit with emptiness and everything being a creation of our mind? How is it real? Tricky one, Linda. I'm going to hand over to Sudhana. It's a good question. So, if we meditate on correct belief, the generic image disappears entirely. The imagined object will become a real object. How does this fit with emptiness and everything being a creation of our mind? How is it real? If we meditate on correct belief, the generic image disappears entirely and the imagined object will become a real object. How does this fit with emptiness and everything being a creation of our mind, and how is it real?
Okay, so I won't repeat the question. We've had it a few times. It's a very good question. Yikes. So, I think, how everything is an appearance to mind, and our gross sense awarenesses see things as real and inherently existent, while our very subtle mind will just see them as an appearance. But what we're trying to do with, I'm going around in circles here, I'm just trying to dig myself out of a hole, but we're trying, because we grasp so strongly at things, all the wrong things, we need to try and imagine all the good things, like, we ourselves are a Buddha, like we do in tantric practice. And by becoming more and more subtle with our mind, then we gradually, the image that we imagine, the generic image we imagine, becomes more and more real, and the actual image, the generic image, fades and appears to us as an actual object, but it's not. I would say it's not real. It's not real, but it's just that it appears to our gross sense awarenesses as a real object. It becomes part of our dream, if you like. It's just part of our dream. Just like somebody walks in through the door and we see that person as a real person, then a person appears to our mind and we see them as a real person, rather than we just got over the stage of imagination and they just, anyway, I'm rambling a bit. Anybody else?
I'm a bit hazy on my tantra, but when you self-generate, you still think everything you generate, you want to imagine, but everything still dissolves. Nothing's still real, and everything dissolves into emptiness, isn't it? Yeah. So basically, I don't know, actually. Don't know. Are you gonna?
I think, yeah, for me, the imagery of the perceptions that we've perceived at that time just disappears into emptiness. That's all I can say about it.
I'm going to hand over to Talopa in a second. You can unpick us. But Linda's saying that it says generic image will then become a real image. That's what she's, and then said, how does that go with emptiness, isn't it? But you're saying the real image isn't real. It's just not a generic. It appears real, but it's still, everything is still emptiness. But I would like to hand over to Talopa.
Yeah, when we meditate on emptiness with a generic image, and the more we meditate on emptiness, then that generic image gradually fades away. And so then, yeah, I'm not quite sure about this question. Yeah, but then also, if you think about as Lucy said, if you think about self-generation, out of emptiness appears, as a different appearing object arises. And I can't think it's anything more than that. Well, what is real? I mean, real is just an appearing object that you realize as empty of inherent existence. It's like the union of clarity and profundity, the union of emptiness and appearance. So, I mean, Geshe is saying that when we're training in this, we're developing compassion for inherently existent beings. And that's how people appear to us, as inherently existent. So we're not we're imagining them, gradually imagining them as free of their suffering. And I think that's all it is. And gradually we'll see they'll appear in a different way, just through the power of our own imagination. And that's all. We're still imagining them as inherently existent pure beings, free from suffering.
Good, yeah. Everyone's saying good. Everyone's saying good question, Linda. And you've got us thinking, and thinking about other Linda. She just wanted to share with us about her sister. So her sister's called Margaret Leake, and she's 67, and really is suffering. She doesn't want to be here. She said the other day in tears, and so much appreciated prayers for her and her family. So Linda, yes, we'll all say some prayers, and Gogden will put her in the book. And Gogden will put her on Kadampa. So it's 22. So we've got time for one more question. Someone's got a question, and then. Okie doke. Thank you, everyone.
Through the virtues I have collected, by practicing the stages of the path, may all living beings find the opportunity to practice in the same way. May everyone experience the happiness of humans and gods, and quickly attain enlightenment, so that samsara is finally extinguished. So that the tradition of Tsongkhapa, the king of the Dhamma, may flourish. May all obstacles be pacified, and may all favorable conditions abound. Through the two collections of myself and others, gathered throughout the three times, may the doctrine of Conqueror Losandrapa flourish forevermore. Tsongkhapa, crown ornament of the scholars of the Land of the Snows. You are Buddha Shakyamuni and Vajradhara, the source of all attainments. Avalokiteshvara, the treasury of unobservable compassion. Manjushri, the supreme stainless wisdom. And Vajrapani, the destroyer of the hordes of martyrs. O venerable Guru Buddha, synthesis of all three truths, with my body, speech, and mind, respectfully I make request. Please grant your blessings to ripen and liberate myself and others, and bestow the common and supreme attainments. Tsongkhapa, crown ornament of the scholars of the Land of the Snows. You are Buddha Shakyamuni and Vajradhara, the source of all attainments. Avalokiteshvara, the treasury of unobservable compassion. Manjushri, the supreme stainless wisdom. And Vajrapani, the destroyer of the hordes of martyrs. O venerable Guru Buddha, synthesis of all three truths, with my body, speech, and mind, respectfully I make request. Please grant your blessings to ripen and liberate myself and others, and bestow the common and supreme attainments. Tsongkhapa, crown ornament of the scholars of the Land of the Snows. You are Buddha Shakyamuni and Vajradhara, the source of all attainments. Avalokiteshvara, the treasury of unobservable compassion. Manjushri, the supreme state.